you from translated to who's your mama? So. All right, let's go. We are right from and
okay, I'm Austin with Radius Group. We're building data infrastructure to help industry employers understand changing workforce needs and scale up the workforce for the shops. And we've done a lot of the R&D for that work in North Carolina, so I'll talk about that.
My name is Natasha Sherwood. I'm the Workforce Development Director for Independent Electrical Contractors. We're 54 chapters, 4,300 contractors, and 22,000 apprentices across the country. And although we do that really well, that's what we're doing. What we're doing now is walking beside other organizations and how do we help them hide the wires behind the wall of apprenticeship so that they can put that forward and stand them up. Electricians are the first in, last out. They can't finish it if the rest of the people don't have labor. So we're trying to help stand that up across the ecosphere of apprenticeship.
Hi everybody, I'm Kenan Harrison. I lead strategic partnerships and impact AI at ETS, previously head of workforce partnerships at ETS. And my day job is pretty fantastic. I get to work with all the major frontier labs, all the major governments, all the major workforce organizations, higher ed institutions, and a bunch of people in this room to provide better data and more trustable data to individuals trying to make decisions for themselves and individuals who are trying to make decisions about talent. And ETS is a 501c3. We're about 80 years old, so we've got lots of data.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Tenorio, and I lead credentialing and curriculum at Autodesk, which is a software company, and it sits in the middle between education and employers. And for those of you that aren't as familiar with Autodesk software, we serve design and making industries, is what we call it. So, and those include architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, digital media and entertainment. And those industries combined employ about 300 million people globally. And right now, these industries are undergoing a massive shift in digital tool adoption, particularly in construction and manufacturing. Those jobs are becoming more and more hybrid jobs, this combination of physical, hands-on expertise in the physical world combined with digital execution. So my role, and what I get to work on every day, is how do we skill people up for these jobs and the way that these jobs are changing, and really thinking about credentials in new ways. We have a technical certification portfolio, but we're really working on new stackable, workflow-based micro-credentials that could be earned as you learn and work, and really as a response to the way that we're seeing how quickly these roles are changing.
that is like the perfect segue, actually. So thank you for that. We didn't even plan it, because that's very future. That's very forward-looking. So my first question, coming around to all of you, but we'll start here, is about the training delivery models. Really, training delivery models for the future. We've talked a lot about it here, but just how are we going to help rapidly skill up, because things are moving so fast. So we'll just go in order.
I think to build on what Lisa said, it really is about right-sized training for workflows that mimic how work is getting done today. I think we see that the scale of skill transition that's about to happen in the economy we just haven't faced before, and our training delivery mechanisms aren't set up for that. So multi-year programs to train for jobs that you could realistically train for in a few months are going to have to undergo a lot of transformation. And so I think what I'd love to see is training that's lower cost, quicker, right-sized to workforce needs, accessible, and a lot of options across thousands of credentials that are training for quality jobs.
Awesome. So rapidly scaling for us, I think, is a couple of things. One is looking at the burden on the employers and how do we make sure that we're taking that off the employers and sponsors, per se. And that's going to take some government, philanthropy, other sources of funding so that we can hire more people. We need 80,000 electricians every year just to build the data centers to house all the AI we keep talking about. We complete about 40,000 a year right now. So if you do the math, we're sliding backwards. So some of those ways that we're looking at it is how do we offer our options that are not the traditional sitting class at night. Do we offer asynchronous classes so that they can take those? Are we training on daytime rather than nights so they have a better workforce, we retain them? What are we doing to break down those barriers, whether it's childcare so they can make it to class, transportation costs, or are we translating and lowering and scaffolding the language down to lower level English or math, but building them up along the way? So really trying to find all of those little aspects that help us retain and help us bring in more individuals into our career specifically, but also across the board of apprenticeship is looking at every occupation is it apprenticeable, and how do you make it apprenticeable? So might that be robotics or semiconductors? Is it IT? Is it surge techs? So taking what we know from the electrical industry and being those good stewards of sharing how that works is kind of how we'll be rapidly scaling across the whole ecosphere of apprenticeship.
I think a couple of problems that ETS works on, I get to work on every day, that are related to both of your answers, and I suspect your answer. One is talent and power. It doesn't matter how clean the path is, it doesn't matter how cheap the path is, it doesn't matter how accessible the path is from a cost or barrier standpoint if you can't find the entry. If you don't know that these jobs exist at all, which is a huge problem, but also that you individually are a good fit, likely to succeed, and to reap the rewards of a strong career in whatever the opportunity is. Trustable measurement of what you know and can do, and then the ability to match that to opportunity, the ability to say, I know for a fact that you can be an advanced manufacturing technician because there is somebody who has the exact same skills as you do, who's already doing it, making $5,000 a year in 5 minutes from where you're standing right now, is a very empowering thing. And I think to your point around credentialing and around the ecosystem that we kind of all grew up with, absolutely, it is set up for what we need, and that's becoming exacerbated by the second. But it's not just because it can't change fast enough, it's because employers also don't trust it. So if we're building a new ecosystem, a new mode of credentialing, it can't just be new and sexy, it has to be trustable, because employers will invest in education and talent, they just won't do it on the spec. So I think that's a huge
I'm curious about, you said about, saying like, I know you have the skills for this, to think, is it like a matchmaking? Like how is
the way that
matchmaking out?
So the way that I talk about this, and we've heard about the skills marketplaces 50 times a day, and it's a valuable thing. I think we should create a marketplace of marketplaces to end in the most ideal outcome for as many people as possible. But it needs a trusted infrastructure. It needs actual measurements. So if I'm using this marketplace or that marketplace, whatever it is, I know that this person is a real person. They actually have these skills, regardless of the other information you give me about them. And we don't need sex, age, gender, location to determine whether or not somebody would be a good fit for a role. We don't need it. But we need to know that that person is real. And so being able to extract labor economics is really important for demand generation, for demand planning, for strategic workforce planning. But if you don't have individualized data about what a person knows and can do in the context of an opportunity, it doesn't matter. And so the way I describe it is Tinder plus Moneyball for jobs.
All right.
I agree with what you said, but I'm going to try to say something different. So I think that both learning and credentialing needs to better resemble work, basically. And I think too often in learning and training, we focus on a controlled environment. We teach you one tool at a time or one feature at a time, and that's not how work gets done. Work gets done across complex workflows, and we need to be teaching that. And more importantly, I think, and especially with the advent of AI, we need to be teaching what to do when something goes wrong. We teach the happy path, like when everything goes great, this is what you need to do. But I think the way that things are changing, we really need to give people more practice and expertise of how do you make decisions when things go wrong, what do you do, how do you adapt on the fly. Those are the skills that are becoming more important.
That's good. That's good. All right. And we're gonna again maybe to everybody, but I'm gonna start with Kenan real quick on this one about making a person's capabilities more portable and visible, verified. You talked a little bit about it, but anything else about making these more portable? And then speak the rest of it.
Yeah, I think portability, we talk about LERs, we talk about skill profiles, we talk about different types of credentials. Really at the end of the day, a credential is a fiat. It's a store of what you know and can do, just like a dollar is a store of value, right? And whether or not the problem with get to measuring an individual's foundational skills. So for example, AI literacy is actually made up of like 20 plus foundational skills, and 90% of them are durable skills. But they're applied in the context of an artificial intelligence tool, and all of a sudden it becomes usable for an industry that is historically thought of as a skill trade, right? And the cool thing about that is we can accurately and provably, like a legally defensible way, measure what those individuals know and do to the extent that it de-risks a talent decision for an employer, or for a college or university, or for a program or apprenticeship provider. And I think giving that information in a way that individuals can own and can say, not only do I have valid, reliable information on what I know and can do with the skills that I have, or also how they translate to your job or this job or that job, but also here's a portfolio of work products that proves that I can do it in the context that you're asking for. And that becomes a really, not just portable, but also very powerful combination.
Verifiable. Austin, you're doing a lot of work on stuff like this. Like, is this missing? Is this a missing link on being able to portable on the skills?
Well, I love what Lisa says about workflows, because I think that's the added layer to make it really pragmatic. If someone can say, I can do this thing, or I can do this work, then it's easier for an employer to measure against their work architecture and say, you have exactly what I need, or you need to go with these things more before I can hire you. So sometimes in the skills conversation, it becomes a little too difficult from a data perspective to match, but if you combine skills with workflow architecture, then you're able to more easily align it with how employers design work and think about work, and it becomes an easier kind of transition into
It's almost like the anecdotal part of it, maybe, of work. Lisa, I'm coming to you now because it's going to kind of segue into something we were talking about a moment ago, about how you see AI changing skills gap, that human decision-making point in the process, things maybe not necessarily testable, verifiable, but that kind of thought process. So talk a little bit about that. Kind of might be where you see things going. Maybe we're not there yet.
Yeah, sure. And my lens is right now is more in construction and manufacturing, what we're seeing there. So I think AI is raising the bar on what competence is and how we measure and validate it, because I'll just give the example. AI is already automating certain tasks within Autodesk tools. So example, you can now generate a variety of designs with AI. You can ask AI to identify clashes or problems, but the human still needs to decide which design am I going to choose? What are the trade-offs of choosing this design? And what are the impacts of this across the whole workflow? So I think, so skills in some way are becoming easier because they're going to be AI assisted, but AI is putting much more weight on judgment and decision making, and it's pushing that down to the execution level. So I think those that are executing the work are going to be tasked with having to make more decisions on the fly because they're doing the job, and that's very different.
Yeah, very different. Natasha, any comments on any of this?
Absolutely. Last week we noticed the deal, just dropped a new AI apprenticeship programs that are out in the whole AI portal, not only to apprenticeable careers into AI, but also how AI will be used into apprenticeships that are currently already existing. So for example, we've launched the PACE AI into our pre-apprentice program. Again, trying to break down barriers for completion. This program takes and ingests our curriculum and then scaffolds it down to low-level reading and math skills, or to 250 different languages, so that there's no barriers for these students to complete the program, so they can be learning English and electric at the same time. And so as more of these opportunities come alongside, it's one of those that I think, as traditional as electric is, right, one of the oldest apprenticeships that we have, it is one of those areas that will start to embrace that. And how can that help us get more electricians onto the field? So if more people understand it and they can pass that journeyman exam, the closer we'll get to it. But in addition, you're starting to see AI tools coming out in the electrical world. So I have AI tools that can take an RFP, look at it and see what the funding might need to be. What is the cost? What's the labor on that? Or an AI tool that for a contractor will need to learn, who may never have done it before, but if there's an AI tool that can say, Bobby, John, and Susie over here already completed that job, I can move over that job tomorrow. Now I'm more productive, my wages can stay higher, I can and complete jobs quicker. So the AI will integrate itself in. And I think it also makes that, you know, talking a little bit about portability, but also the next kind of steps is that long-term learning that education plays in electric into all of our skilled trades. That it doesn't just stop when you get that one certificate. It's going to change daily. So I think that's the part that AI will change, is that we have to start to open up and how do we use it and not be scared of it. I related to a professor that was saying when Google first came out, you can't trust Google, you need to go to the library to find out. You have to look at the encyclopedia. And now you can buy encyclopedias maybe on eBay. So I believe that AI will be that tool across all of our industries.
Perfect segue to a plug. We run a report. It's literally about 20,000 people globally in 20 different countries, over 1,000 people per country. It's called Human Progress Report. We assess and survey how people feel about the labor market, how people feel about education, how people feel about workforce development. And one of the outcomes of this year's 2026 version is that we shifted in 2024 from about 80% of people identifying as lifelong learners to 80% of people explicitly identifying that adaptability and new learning opportunities as being the only way for survival in their career choice. And for one of the oldest apprenticeships, that has unbelievable demand and a huge talent gap. Also be identifying that type of career path, what people feel from these topics.
All right, awesome. One of my favorite topics here. Collaboration. You mentioned to me, so overview on, what's your vision? Are we zooming out on employers, government, training providers, coordinating at scale? Oh, it's so easy.
The vision of our work is really around domain-driven economies, which I think most people need to familiar with why it's important. It's really hard to do without good data, and without employers coordinating with government training providers to kind of simulate training around those jobs. And so that's where we spend all of our time, is how do we help employers move from these legacy spreadsheets and HR systems to actually being able to communicate with how our jobs are changing in real time, so that we can kind of move at the speed of the economy. And it also helps employers to make a business case. If they say we have vacancies across these roles, we can approve proactive job training to fund in coordination with our state agencies or federal policy levers. And so in North Carolina, we spend a lot of time with the healthcare sector. We've got data directly from HR systems from over 60% of healthcare employers in the state. So that's hundreds of employers, thousands of facilities, and have data actually down to the facility level that shows basically how demand is changing across job specialties, across facility types. When you have that level of granularity from the private sector, it's a lot easier to then model out what are our gaps, what are the training needs. And so we're able to look at the state level and see that there's basically an opportunity for over 60,000 more North Carolinians to transition into quality health jobs and to model exactly what those transitions would look like. And then the work becomes a lot more fun when you have kind of the future demand state and demand assessment that you need. You can model out policy levers, the programs, the training vehicles that are the best use of resources. So that's what we're in the middle of now. It's kind of the simulation of how would we transition 60,000 more people into these quality health jobs, generate over $5 billion more in wages per year for North Carolinians, for jobs that we otherwise have vacant or unfilled, or good at people coming in from out of state, travel workers. And so a lot of the costs around like vacancies and talent shortages are often talked about as a deficit. I think we see a massive opportunity for resilient, localized talent pipelines, creating more wages locally without having to import new talent or find temporary contractors that are paying triple for it.
So you see that data is the mobilizing point.
I never thought I would run a data company ever. I just really cared about jobs and opportunity. But when you look at how employers and governments are making decisions today around workforce, it's just so obvious the level of fear and uncertainty and just the lack of visibility into how the world is moving around us. And what's exciting now with advances in technology, we have so much information
just different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in regards to credentialing and curriculum, we use data a lot to try to, I mean, we want to align to where the industry is going, where jobs are going. So data is incredibly critical to look at patterns of what's happening. And, you know, just as an example, in the manufacturing space, CNC operators is a job role that is becoming, is growing incredibly. And, you know, getting data up, you know, real-time data on what that looks like, who's employing, across what industries, what are all the different job titles that are being used, and what are all the capabilities. So data is hugely important to me to get that right, because if I'm going to create a job certification for the CNC operator, you know, how is it going to serve all these employers?
And I know, I think sometimes we forget, like AI is data. Like we can't get anywhere without our data house in order. Okay, I want to pivot to one of my favorite topics of apprenticeships, and then I'll start with Natasha. Like, and if you could talk a little about, you know, now, but I want to see like your eye toward the future, like even like the crazy stuff you might imagine for apprenticeships in the future.
No one should ask me for crazy ideas because I usually will come up with a few. But I think probably where I see apprenticeship going, and we've already talked a little bit about AI and the actual apprenticeship, what I see changing is where we start the apprenticeship journey and where it can go. And I think the biggest thing is looking for where those on-ramps are. If you think of this as a journey, where are those on-ramps coming? For us right now, many of my contractors are so busy, they need so many people, they don't have time to hire. And I know it sounds almost like a contradiction, but they need more, a little bit more than just green coming on. So what we're looking at is where does that come into? So pre-apprenticeship, you're going to start hearing it everywhere if you haven't heard before, for pre-apprenticeship, but where does that start? For us, it's starting right now in high schools. We're giving you, but where the awareness is coming is camps in the summer for middle school students. And that's where they're making decisions because by the time they're in high school, they've already somewhat been programmed into what path they're going. And we have to expose them early. So we have camps going for middle schoolers. We also have camps just for girls. So they can be in a space where they can learn and see and ask questions. And then how do we break down those barriers for other places? Department of Juvenile Justice, we launched a program for students behind the walls. So when they came out, they could go into work. In fact, our first graduated December 2024. He started last year in 25. He just finished in the 91.4% average with his first apprenticeship year, bought his own car, and got his own apartment. Has a girlfriend, not sure about that decision yet. We'll let him go for that. But those kind of finding the employees are out there. We have to find where they are. And I think that's really what's going to change with apprenticeship is not necessarily what's going on in those classes. But yes, you're going to see search tech, and you're going to see IT and robotics and finance and healthcare. That's going to change. But where we have to look at for this group is where are those on-ramps? Because where they get on, you're all going to start traveling it together. And there'll be some off-ramps, but remember there's always a way back on. So whether we talked about EV charging, it's different than it was 2 years ago. So we get on, we travel about apprenticeship, and what's that continuing data that shows where do we need to go next? That's what I think is the
Oh man, on-ramps, that is good.
I think it needs to be a pull and a push.
Push and pull.
It can't just be, you have a very serious problem. Nursing industry is a very serious problem. Education industry, the list goes on, of course, which is why we're all here. But it's so often either a push or a pull. It's never very infrequently, but we're starting to see more of it. But like we're working with educational institutions, big ones, state ones, system level, and they're taking active measures. We're helping them curate data, we're helping them understand pathways, and then we're giving students the ability to actually explore careers and then look at how their skills will fit and their degree fit to an electrician apprenticeship that they might not have ever considered. And I think that's a component of not just the employer saying, we need you, but also the educators and the guidance counselors and the career services saying, hey, you should consider this if you haven't already.
So I'll go real quickly on that. Not just guidance counselors. I love when I was a guidance counselor. The most important place it can be is in math, science, and English classes of middle school students. Your guidance counselors see them maybe 4 times a year if you're lucky. Your math, science, and English teachers see them every single day and can talk those industries. So this last budget, I'm glad that apprenticeship becomes a choice, not an option. And it's just an opportunity, not a chance.
Good sound bites. Okay, my favorite part. I've warned you all. This is our last question. We're going to do rapid fire predictions. Your prediction for the future, Lisa. You ready?
Oh my goodness. I wish I had a crystal I hope for the future that we're going to see learning and credentialing happen more in the work itself. And I think we can provide guidance as we do that. Like if you're completing tasks and I can then give you a credential that says you just built this skill, and guess what? That skill can lead you on this pathway. Hey, do you want to earn the next step in that pathway? So instead of thinking about it as a separate system you have to go and find, how can we get that closer to the work itself?
I love that. All right, credentials in the workplace. Austin, predictions.
I'm a bit of an optimist.
I love this.
For me, I think it's anyone who wants to train for the job can access the training to do that. I'd love to see more people really think about their zone of genius and the role they want to play in society and finding work that kind of fits with their natural gifts. And I think we're in this role, a lot of my people come from rural Appalachia, and so I look at this one as one of positive disruption. The labor market's not been for decades, and we have this kind of systemic shaking that's happening that could allow us to rethink the jobs that are paid well, the jobs that are important. And I'd love to see more people going into jobs that build the world they want to live in. It's caring for an aging population, producing renewable energy, making sure that we've got goods and services that make life easier and better for us. And I think a lot more people are going to have those opportunities to work in infrastructure jobs or creating and building technologies. So I'd love to see that happen. And the most optimistic version of me would love to see in the next 5 or 6 years some sort of New Deal for American workers. I think we're in a weird time right now, but there's going to be stronger job candidates coming in either at the federal or even state levels who are going to be pushing for economic transformation for their positions. And so I see a lot of the work that we can do as practitioners over the next 5 years is getting ready for that moment, understanding what works, what jobs are going to be kind of the best ones that we move to for most people. So that when the resources are ready to move at scale, they're spent wisely and getting the life.
Okay, I'm getting pretty inspired. All you entrepreneurs out there, these are the new big business ideas right now, right here.
So I'm going to take your crystal ball and your optimism and my Florida background. I'm going to go some pixie dust instead. If I could wish, if I could throw some pixie dust, there'd be 2 things.
Challenge by distributed opportunities, not my optimistic prediction is going to be that opportunity will start to be distributed more widely. And I think that'll be in part due to necessity. I think, you talked about the number of data centers in Bill Bear, they're in areas where historically opportunity does not exist. But I also think that access to learning, to your point, access to learning